a story of a dangerous obsession with female beauty. It's called Snow White and the Seven.
Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening.
That at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of happy.
What started as Disney's next big fairy tale reboot has spiraled into a full-blown PR nightmare. Death threats, boycotts, political outrage, and one of the biggest box office disasters in recent memory. At the center of it all, Rachel Zegler, who went from rising star to cultural lightning rod in record time. One tweet, one role, and a wave of headlines later, Snow White's magic mirror is reflecting back a story Disney never wanted to see. So how did a princess remake become a battlefield for American politics, Hollywood egos, and internet outrage? Let's rewind. It all exploded in November 2024, right after the presidential election. Rachel Zegler took to social media and posted F Donald Trump, followed by May Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace. The backlash was immediate and ferocious. Conservative influencers called for a boycott, hashtags trended, and Disney was forced to ramp up security for its lead actress after she began receiving death threats. What was already a film surrounded by controversy now became a political powder keg. Right-wing media figures labelled Zegler a woke warrior, and campaigns urging fans to boycott the film spread like wildfire. But it wasn't just isolated rage. This controversy opened old wounds from earlier in the film's promotional cycle, where Zegler had already raised eyebrows for previous comments about traditional fairy tales and gender roles. Now, critics from across the political spectrum were demanding her removal from the film, and Disney found itself in an impossible position. Recasting the lead this late in the game was out of the question, but staying silent risked alienating huge swaths of the audience. And so the studio scrambled behind the scenes while trying to put on a brave face. But the damage was done, and it would only snowball from there. But the fuse had been burning long before that tweet. Back in October 2016, The Hollywood Reporter announced that Disney was planning a live-action remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Mark Platt, a self-proclaimed fan of the original, signed on as producer, and Aaron Creaser Wilson began early work on the script. At one point, Disney even considered a martial arts adaptation set in China, but that version never made it past development hell. What started as a whimsical idea to reimagine the first full-length animated feature in Disney history soon became a corporate headache, years in the making. By May 2019, director Mark Webb was circling the project, and screenwriting duties bounced between big Hollywood names. Greta Gerwig came on briefly to co-write before exiting, leaving Wilson with sole credit. Still, Gerwig, along with Jez Butterworth and Stephen Levinson, received behind-the-scenes nods for their contributions. But even with creative minds on board, Disney couldn't seem to land on a consistent vision. Was this a gritty feminist reboot or a glossy musical tribute? The indecision crept into every layer of production, and tension brewed between departments trying to align tone, visuals, and messaging. The Snow White project was gaining buzz, but not all of it was positive. Skeptics were already wary of Disney's remake formula wearing thin, and the company's increasingly public political entanglements made it a lightning rod for backlash from both sides of the aisle. By 2020, just as things started to take shape, the world came to a standstill with the COVID-19 pandemic. What followed was a mess of delays, restructuring, and confusion, and this was all before the cameras even started rolling. Then came the casting. In June 2021, Rachel Zegler was announced as Snow White. The internet had opinions. Her comments about reimagining the character as more independent and not dreaming about true love stirred up early backlash. But her casting wasn't just a studio decision, it came with a glowing recommendation from Steven Spielberg, who had just directed her in West Side Story. Spielberg's influence gave her instant credibility in Hollywood, but it didn't shield her from the court of public opinion. Critics argued the remake was pandering to modern sensibilities at the expense of the original fairy tale charm. Then, in November, Gal Gadot was cast as the evil queen, and fans were hyped. Glamorous, fierce, and already a proven box office draw, Gadot seemed like the perfect fit to go head-to-head with Zegler. But the updates didn't stop there. In a December interview, Zegler casually revealed that the prince had been completely removed from the story. In his place, a brand new character named Jonathan, played by Andrew Burnap. It was a radical shift from the original fairy tale, and fans weren't thrilled. To make things more confusing, another casting call went out for a younger Snow White, a role that eventually went to child actress Amelia Fowler. Meanwhile, Martin Klee confirmed he'd be playing Grumpy, a role he basically made for himself, having starred in similar parts in other Snow White adaptations. As the cast filled out, excitement grew, but so did scrutiny. For every fan cheering the diversity and modernization, there was another crying foul over Disney's rewriting of tradition, and it was only getting started. Filming was cursed from the start. Originally planned for March 2020 in Vancouver and LA, COVID-19 shut down production until July. By August 2021, the team moved the shoot to the UK, with filming officially beginning March 7, 2022. Just 8 days in, a fire broke out on the Pinewood Studios lot. A tree ignited on one of the constructed sets, halting everything. No one was injured, but the bad omen lingered. This was just the beginning of a production riddled with mishaps. From frequent location changes to budget overruns, insiders described the shoot as one of the most chaotic Disney had faced in years. Crew morale reportedly plummeted, and whispers of creative disagreements between executives and department heads kept surfacing. To add to the tension, Disney had grand expectations for Snow White. This wasn't just another remake, it was supposed to be a global hit, the kind of film that anchored merchandise lines, theme park attractions, and streaming spin-offs. But behind the scenes, confidence was crumbling. Then came the reshoots. Disney reportedly hated the initial cut delivered in June 2024. Massive changes followed. Entire scenes were scrapped, and the ending was reworked to include a more dramatic face-off between the evil queen and the magic mirror. A new song, Snow White Returns, was added, while another track, Hidden in My Heart, sung by one of the dwarves and described as a show-stopping emotional ballad, was completely cut. The New York Times had even previewed it as the film's emotional high point. Yet despite all these efforts, the final product still didn't sit right. Still, the studio pressed on. When Snow White finally hit theaters, the reaction was brutal. As of April 9, 2025, it had grossed just $78.8 million in the US and Canada, with another $91.3 million internationally, a total of $170.1 million globally. Decent, maybe for a mid-budget flick, but for a film Disney reportedly needed to earn $500 million just to break even, it was a catastrophic miss. Industry insiders pegged Disney's broader losses across recent flops at nearly $200 billion, a staggering figure that became meme fodder online. Critics tore into the film, calling it visually stunning but narratively flat. Audience scores tanked, and even mainstream outlets acknowledged the controversy overshadowed whatever magic the movie had left. Zegler, once seen as the fresh face of Disney's future, was now stuck defending a film many believed was doomed from the start. Despite issuing a public apology and explaining the toll the backlash had taken on her, the damage was done. "I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have," she said. "I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats." In the end, Disney set out to retell a beloved classic for a new generation. Instead, they walked headfirst into a culture war, creative chaos, and financial disaster. And as for Snow White, let's just say this wasn't the happily ever after they were hoping for.